Well, here we are at the end of this beginner's class, an introduction to polymer clay and caning and simple bead making. Yep, that's what it was. Anyway, so here are the beads that I made in class, just using the simplest cane there is. And you know, we started with a pretty limited color palette, didn't we? But we mixed those secondary colors. Yeah. So once you get accustomed, once you know that you love it, and I hope you do, that's when you can go out there and get all those colors you want. But I happen to believe that in the beginning, it's probably good to start small, learn a couple things along the way, and you know, then you will know whether you want to like jump in with both feet. Now, you've made this. But, you know, with just the addition of a very few techniques, Skinner blend, one color to another, blending, Skinner blend, zipper cane. This is in a class. I will put a link to it. And, you know, just those few simple things. And these become quite a bit more complicated, even though in terms of like real world working on it, it's not really terribly more complicated at all. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you pursue polymer clay. And if you like it, maybe you'll consider joining the classroom and taking some more classes. Now, the classes in the classroom have things like materials lists and templates and things like that, that this class does not. Yeah, it's true. What can I say? What can I say? Okay, guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for watching. And until we meet again, I'm Donna Kato, signing off. Well, I'm back again. If you've watched any of my classes, you know this happens quite a bit. I go away, I come back. Yeah, it happens. But you know, this time I'm coming back because I want to apologize for the editing. Some of the transitions from one scene to another may be a little weird. You know why? Because for some unknown reason, I slipped into okay mode. You know what that is? That is starting every single scene with the word okay. Okay. So I wanted to get rid of some because I got tired of hearing myself say okay. That's why some of the transitions are a little rough. I left a few in, but please forgive me. I am working on this okay problem. Yeah, I am. So now it really is time to start class. Okay, so you're in the store, you're looking around, you found the polymer clay, and you're faced with an array of colors that just makes your brain hurt. Yeah, what colors? I want them all. I want them all. But if you're a beginner, probably you don't want them all, because that's a lot of money. So what you do want in terms of color, just the most basic few colors that you can get and mix all your secondary colors, would be these. Okay, first of all, black and white. Of course, you need these. Don't confuse the white with translucent, okay? Because in the package, they can look the same. Also, don't confuse the white with pearl. You want the white. Okay, so here's black. You won't confuse that with anything. Now let's talk about your primers. You're going to need yellow, of course. You're going to need some form of blue. There are warm blues, there are cool blues. Just pick a blue. And then you're going to need red. And you're also going to need magenta. Okay, why do you need the magenta? Because these two colors do not make violet. See these two? They make some sort of muddy, browny, purpley stuff. But if you want violet, you're going to need this and this, not this one. Okay, Now, you can make orange using this and this, or even this and this. You take these two and you got green. So now we've covered your primary colors and your secondary colors. And because you're just starting, I think that's plenty to start with. You're not making some heavy, big investment in clay. Okay? So get these. Now let me talk about a little bit about the brands. You got your basic strong brands and you have your weak ones, or weak one. All right? Now, Kato Polyclay is really strong. Cernit is strong. Primo is strong. Fimo is strong. I haven't used Fimo Soft in so long, I don't know about Fimo Soft. Anyway, stay away from one clay. Just one. Sculpey 3. Okay? Sculpey 3 is fine for kids. But even then, I would say Sculpey 3 is not really great because it's too weak. It's too brittle. It breaks too easily. So all your work will end up in a pile of broken pieces. All right? So I would say please stay away from that clay, but the rest of them are pretty strong and the rest of them will do you just fine. All right, so let's get started. Woohoo! We're going to condition next. Okay, so let's do yellow. Look, I got schmutz on my yellow clay. So you know what? Schmutz, for me, I just take my blade and I just, I will cut schmutz off. All right. So that's the official name, schmutz. Now, here is a piece of clay that I cut off of a big block of Kato, and that's what I'm going to use. All right. Now, I have not used the other clays, so I'm not going to talk about them. But this demonstration is going to show you how to condition the most difficult clay to condition. Okay? This is the most difficult, bar none. It's more difficult than any of the others. It has advantages that many of the others don't. So, I always use this clay. I love it. I am happy with it. So, this tool is an acrylic rod. It is an extraordinarily big acrylic rod. It is called the Boss. And the Boss is from Teresa Salgado's Tiny Pandora site. And I love it because it has a lot of weight to it. Now, I'm going to stand up. And you can see how thick it is. I am just going to flatten it. This is kind of like preconditioning. Oh, sleeves up. Sleeves up. I think this clay is a little old. I have some clay that's probably older than some of you are out there. Yeah, I do. Still good, still useful. I probably have canes that are older than some of you guys. Yeah. Dun, dun, dun. As long as it's not exposed to heat. Like your old ancient canes will be fine. Now I can tell that this clay is rather stiff. See how when I roll it, it develops these little cracks? Yeah. Well, that tells me something about the clay. It's telling me that it's going to take a little more effort for me to condition it. And that when I condition it, I'm going to use my pasta machine, of course. Okay. Now, you guys, pasta machine, whenever you can get one, I highly recommend it. Highly. Okay. Now you can see that? Now that is about the thickest setting of my pasta machine, or probably the thickest setting of most. They're pretty uniform across all brands. Sometimes the numbering is reversed. My machine 0 is the thickest. Another machine like an Imperia 9 might be the thickest. So the numbers might be reversed, but the basic settings are the same, close to the same. but we're using something that's used for food. And I don't think if you're making lasagna, if you are just a smidge different from Imperia to Atlas, I don't think it makes much difference. Okay, so I'm going to roll this through the pasta machine, through the thickest setting. All right, so look, it's holding together just fine. Now at this point, I can feel the brittleness in the clay. So what I'm going to do is reset my machine and make it thinner. And you know what? I'm going to go from 0 to 2. I'm skipping 1. Now I'm going to roll it through. Da, da, da. Still good. Let's make it thinner yet. This is setting number 3. Now, it is at this point that I'm going to start folding and rolling. If I had folded and rolled at setting 0 for this clay, this particular kind of POLYCLAY, it would have crumbled. It would have crumbled under the rollers. But rolling it just a bit thinner helps me a lot. So now I'm going to roll it through the machine through setting 3. Ta-ta! Okay, so I'm going to keep folding and rolling. Now let's say this clay, was manufactured in 1994. And it happens to be really old and hard. Did you get that? Then what I do is at this point, instead of folding and rolling at 3, I would go up to 5. Yeah, here we go. Here's 5. 5. Look at that. Getting a few little crumbs there. Because essentially the thinner the setting, the faster it's going to condition. And particularly if the clay is very old and very dry, you might go up to 6 or 7 on your machine. All right. This is feeling pretty good. It still feels kind of dry to me and kind of brittle. So there's a solution for that, because I want my clay to be a bit softer, just a bit. Now this is called conditioning bar. I'm going to take some of this stuff and I'm just gonna put it right in this clay. Now how much? That's really a judgment call. How much is always a judgment call. I can always put more in, so let's start there. All right. I'm gonna take the bus. Just gonna spread this stuff across. Now, this conditioning bar is so wonderful. It's wonderful. Now, in the old days, we used to use liquid clay. So you'd sploosh this really sticky stuff on the clay, and then you'd fold it, you put it in the machine, and it would just like shoot out the top. Yeah, it was a mess. It was a mess. And then it would take a long time to work its way in. Okay, so you can see that it's kind of, my sheet is not so perfect, right? It is at this point that I want you to resist the urge to take it and roll it into a ball, okay? Try to retain the sheet. That's what we want. And although it may not be a perfect sheet, there may be holes in it, it's fine. This is what we want. Fold it, roll it through, still a sheet. Fold it, roll it through, and off we go. Now the reason why this conditioning bar is so terrific is because it works its way into the clay so nicely, all right? Because a lot of bad stuff can happen. You know what the bad stuff is? This is like bad stuff right here. And if you use liquid, what happens many times is that the whole thing is nothing but this. And you're sitting there and your hands are just full of liquid clay and you sticky, and you can't pick anything up. And this is not a sheet, it's a sea of crumbles. All right. But see, working itself in. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. Here we go. That's not so beautiful, but it happens. Into my life, bits of schmutz find their way onto clay on a pretty darn regular basis. Okay, but here we go. And this clay has a beautiful feel. And that was just with the conditioning bar. So you saw how I did it. Work your way. Work it in gradually. Don't put too much in. You can always put more in, because you really don't want it too soft. All right. Okay, so here, this guy's pretty much ready to go. Let me roll it back down through the thickest setting. Has a really nice feel to it. Yeah. Yummy. Yummy. And let me condition. Let's see, what color shall we make? Let's make a green. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to show you is a really quick way of mixing your secondary colors and mixing them in a way that you can reproduce them. I have to condition this now. I'm not going to make you watch. I lied, I'm back sooner, but I want to show you something. Now I cut my blue in half inch. You see all this light stuff in here? Well, my clay is telling me something, and what it is doing is it's telling me that it has advanced. Now, what is advancing? In the terminology of polymer clay, advancing is when the clay, the ingredients in the clay start separating. You see, this material, composed of a lot of different ingredients. Some are wet, some are dry. And over time, as they sit somewhere, they start to migrate back to their original parts. And that's when you see this dryness, right? And that's what conditioning is. Conditioning is, because even if you don't see it, it's happening. This is just a little more extreme example, but it always happens. It always happens. And that's why we condition, because even though you can't see it, it's happening. And you want to get all those ingredients mixed back up together, just like they were at the factory, or as close as possible. All right? So now I'm going to take this advanced clay and I'm going to restore it to the condition we want it at. Okay, so look, conditioned blue, ultra blue, conditioned yellow. Now, I want to make green. I want to make some shade of green. So these sheets have been rolled through the same setting on my pasta machine. That would be setting, oh, I meant to do 0. Let's do 0. Let me clean my machine under the roller. Yeah. Try to get rid of some schmutz. Okay, so you know, I just re-rolled through setting 0, but it doesn't really matter. These just have to be the same. Then you're going to take a cutter. Now, this is a Kemper cutter. These things are great. It has a little ejector mechanism. Yeah, fantastic. Now, the cutters that I use are all very just geometric shapes. I don't have any, like, different shapes. Because for my work, I find it most helpful to have circles and maybe an occasional triangle. Maybe a square here or there, but you know, I don't really need dog bones and you know, stuff like that. Anyway, so let's start. So I'm going to begin by just cutting one of each of these. Now, I can tell you one thing, yellow is weak, this blue is really strong. I think I'll cut 2 yellow. And I'll probably have to cut a lot more yellow. Okay. Just rolling, 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 rolling. Roll. Oh, please roll. Pity. That's not a bad green, huh? Okay, here we go. That's a rather nice green. It's not completely blended together, but I like this green. I think it's a fine green, just as a basic green. Now, let's say that you think that, you know, I really like a more yellow green. I like a green that leans more to the lime. Well, in a case like that, you're just going to cut another one, work it in, and see what you have. Okay, so I would highly recommend the cutter method like this because it will prevent you from using, like for instance, all your white clay. I remember as a child like wanting to mix some colors and somehow I ended up like using all my white clay every time. Of course, I was just a little kid then. Okay, so here is another shade of green. Now, if you like this shade of green, then what you're going to do is you are going to write it down. Get yourself a little pad of paper, something. I have so many pads of paper, I can't find any. And you know what? My pads of paper are all like this. Okay. So what should we call that? Is that a grass green? What kind of green is that? Well, let's just say green number 1. One part ultra blue, 3 parts yellow. Easy enough, and easy enough to reproduce when you want it. So that is how you will approach using just these very few colors, creating your secondary colors, all right? Color mixing, easy color mixing, extremely easy color mixing. Now, if you wanted to, you could also just make yourself a little chip. Okay, so let's make a chip. Doesn't have to be a very thick chip. To be a good place to use a little Kemper square cutter. I don't have it out. Okay, 1 ultra blue, 3 yellow. Now you bake this in the oven and you keep the chip. Okay, let's move on. Well, here we are at the end, and you know, I looked at these again and I thought, I really should have talked to you about white. Okay. Now, these beads, I think these beads are fine. They're pure color. There's no, I didn't add any white to any of the colors. I didn't make them more opaque. Now, I think if you wanted to make these colors pop more, let's say you find them a little bit dark, then you should add white. And you don't have to add a lot, just a little bit of white will brighten it up, make it lighter. Okay, for instance, this pinky color, well, that's just magenta with white in it. And you really see that, don't you? You see that in a way you wouldn't have seen it if it were this color, right? I think you can imagine that. If you wanted to brighten this up, let's say you wanted to brighten the violet up, just add some white. That white's going to bring the opacity of the color up as it lightens the color as well. So I think that that's one thing that I wish I had done in class. I really didn't want to make the class very complicated, but you know what? I think that I probably should have talked about that. So as you are mixing your colors, just do a little experimentation, and you know, you don't have to add a lot. You don't want to make things pastel. Maybe you do. You know, you might want pastels instead, which would be a lot more white. But just give that a go. Give it a try. Lighten up the colors by adding a bit of white. You know what? I think this is a good chance to talk about this. We took them out of the package. What do we do now? I'm going to show you. All right, so the way I like to store my clay is to simply roll it up like this, okay? You can always flatten it out with your pasta machine later, but this is a more efficient shape. Okay, doink, 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 and it doesn't have to be the prettiest thing you've ever made, but there you go. Then you take one of these. Now, this is a Plano box. My friend Lane gave me so many of these. Thank you, Lane. I love them so much. But you want containers that are this sort of nylon, softy stuff. You don't want something that's like hard plastic. If you get that hard, very clear plastic, you're going to put this in a box and it's going to melt. Yeah, it's going to melt. I mean, it'll melt the plastic. So what you do is you just take your clay like so, and you put it in one of these. Now, if you go to any big box craft store, frequently they have boxes not like this. Well, this type of box, but they're quite a bit cheaper, and you can get those, and those are perfect for storing your clay. Huh? Keeps it clean, and it will be ready for you when you are ready for it. So now I'm going to be mixing. I'm just going to take these and I'm going to mix my secondary colors. I have my primaries. I'm going to mix my secondaries. All right, so I think a good strategy, first of all, this is approximately half of that pack, so I'm just going to leave it just like that. I'm going to leave that like that. Now, yellow is where, because we need yellow for green and we need yellow for orange as well. Don't we? Yeah, we do. All right, so, hello. So let me just cut this in half. Okay, so, you know, experienced clay people are probably freaking out. She cut through the cellophane. You know what? Okay, I cut through the cellophane. No cellophane on the block. And that's the most important thing. Just make sure you don't leave any cellophane. All right, so I'm going to do my best to mix my colors. Now this is kind of what remains. So let's say I'm going to mix these two and these two. Okay, maybe I need these two. Yeah, you know what? The blue and the yellow get used twice, don't they? Yeah, they do. Now, I'm just setting this up because I'm sure I'm going to need more of one than another. I have this leftover red. Okay, so kind of roughly, this is the way it's going to go. Oh, like this. Violet, green, orange. My original colors up here. Okay. I'm going to follow the same strategy. I'm going to do 1 part of blue and 3 parts of yellow, and I'm going to figure out what the exact percentages and ratios are for orange and violet. Okay. Whew, that was hard. Okay, so look, I mixed my secondary colors. Primaries. Primaries. Secondary. Okay, so this is what I have left. Magenta, blue, red, and only this much yellow. This is it on the yellow front. So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us a couple things. First of all, you might want to get too yellow. But what it also says is that yellow is not very strong. It took a lot more yellow to make this green than it took this blue. It took a lot more yellow to make this orange than it took red. We can see that just by what's left over. This is it for yellow. Lots of this blue left. Lots of this red. And I only used magenta once, so that's why there's that much of it sitting there. So we have learned several things. So my recommendation, get to yellow. All right, so let me prepare, because we're just going to be making the very simplest canes. We're not even going to do Skinner blends. Not this time. This is a beginner first-timers class. So we're not going to do anything other than the simplest bullseyes and jelly roll. All right, so let me prepare and I'll be back. All right, so we're just going to make very simple bullseyes. Now, this is an example of a bullseye cane here. You see it's a color in the middle, a cylinder, and then it's wrapped with white, wrapped with black, wrapped with another color, wrapped. You can go on wrapping for a long time. We're going to do just, for instance, violet, wrapped with black, magenta, wrapped with black, orange wrapped with black, red wrapped with black. So just the simplest little canes for us today. All right, so let's make the first one. And we're also not going to make humongous canes. We're making tiny canes, all right? Because we don't really need to make huge ones. So this is as much clay as I'm going to use. Now I'm going to roll this and thin it out just a bit. Go through setting number 3 on my pasta machine. And when you roll something up, it's kind of easier to take your blade, then make a beveled cut, turn it over, and from that bevel, just start working it slowly like this. Now, when you roll, I want you to think of a handkerchief edge. You know when they make handkerchiefs, it's almost like they're taking this very, very fine fabric and pushing it back into itself, as opposed to hemming your blue jeans. Yeah, hemming your blue jeans is definitely not what we want. Okay, so at the other end, let us cut like so. Okay, now let's roll. Now, you always end up with an edge like that. Yeah, it's a pain. And I could do this for a very, very, very long time. But we don't have that much time. So I take something like this. Now, this is just a brass rod that I got out of a bin at a hobby store, because they sell this stuff in like 5-foot long lengths, and then they cut it to the length you want. Well, this is a leftover. I love it. Okay, so now I want you to watch me. I'm going to take this and I'm going to whip it along. You see? I'm just whipping it. Whip, 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 whip. Where'd it go? It's gone. And I did not have to roll for 3 weeks. Cut the ends off. This is plenty for our cane. Now, bad me, bad, I didn't condition this. I'm going to condition this. You can think about rolling cylinders. Okay, I conditioned this up really fast because the clay is quite soft. Okay, so now I'm just gonna cut a strip like that. See, it's the same width, approximately the same width. And I'm gonna make this really, really thin because that one package of clay is gonna have to do a heck of a lot of wrapping. Yep. Now, here's the thing about stripes and outlines and canes. You think this is thin, but then you use it and you discover this is quite thick. So I'm gonna take and reset my machine and roll this through setting number 7. Skinny. See this? Thin. And that is what I'm going to wrap with. 7. Okay, stop sticking to me, please. Please. Let's wrap. Let's wrap. I'm just going to put it around like so. And then as I'm wrapping, I'm kind of stretching it. So that clay is just snugging right up against the cylinder. Now, I'm going to roll it back. And see that mark? I transferred the mark. Makes it easy to cut like that. Now I'm just going to close it up like so and roll. I'm going to put this somewhere so I can use it again. Ugh. All right, now it's time to wrap this guy. Let me just cut off the end and show you. Okay, now I'm going to take and I'm going to wrap this around. And you know what? That's a good thickness, I think. So let me go back to the thickest. Roll it through a few times. I could soften this clay a bit. That I could do. I didn't do any softening at all. I think I'll just let it go this way. Okay, I have an air pocket. You know how I know? Because I can see it. So I'm just going to take a little needle and pierce it. Very easy. Okay, here we go. All right. So let's wrap. Transfer the mark, cut along the mark. This goes in my scrap pile. And now, when it comes time to close this, you want to just sort of do like this. See what I'm doing? I'm not letting it just flop where it wants to go. The goal is to have this edge right here touching that edge, like that. See? All right. And this is a bullseye, a happy little bullseye. It's a happy little bullseye. Okay, here we go. Now let me cut this end, got a little extra. Sometimes you can take it apart, like take this off. Save a little bit of your clay, maybe you need it later. Put that there. Other one goes in the scrap pile. Okay, now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it with black again. Yeah, kind of a nice finish, I think. Okay, let's give it a go. Here's the black. Take it, put it on. Do that same kind of stretchy thing. See, I'm just pulling on it. I'm stretching that clay over. Transfer the edge, back it up, cut along the edge, and boom. You have made a bullseye cane. Yeah, cool, huh? Now, got a little bit of a gap there. Ugh. I didn't really want that gap. Sometimes it happens. Might have been a little bit off in my cutting. It's not going to really make much difference because I'm going to be reducing this really small. Okay, so there's one cane. Now, I'm going to do precisely the same thing with the other colors. Okay, so I'll be back when that's done. I don't think you want to watch me do this one and then this one, do you? I didn't think so. Okay, so I decided I'm going to make it even simpler. We're not going to make a jelly roll. There's very little that's simpler than a jelly roll, but I think for this class, we're going to stick with our bowls. Aren't they cute? I think they're really cute. I love them. Now, what you see here is scrap clay. As you work, you will accumulate scrap clay. So I put the scrap from these cane ends that I caught, and I didn't have very much scrap clay. So I reached into my scrap clay bin, which is quite large. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I rolled this through like setting number 3 or something. I'm just gonna roll a very tight cylinder because that's the beginning of our beads. Yes, it is. Truly. If I'm lying, I'm dying. All right, let's do our same little trick here. Da, da, da. Just whip it over, close the end. Doink, doink, doink. Like so. Just like that. Now, I'm going to take this black clay. I'm going to roll it through the pasta machine. And we're going to wrap this scrap cylinder. Yes, we are. We're just going to wrap this puppy right up. Doesn't have to be very thick. So let us roll this through like, oh, setting number 4. That sounds good to me. Setting number 4. There we go. Just like so. Actually, I changed my mind. I'm going to 5, going to 5. All right. Now, I'm going to take this thin sheet of black. I'm going to wrap it around the scrap clay. We're going to cover it up. We are going to cover it up. Yep. Okay. Don't want to waste this. Okay, so you know what you can do with your scrap clay too? We have a product called Blackout. And you know what it does? It's so great. It turns scrap clay into black clay. Yeah. Yep. It is terrific. It is amazing. Okay, so let's just reduce this out. And what I'm doing here is just rolling lightly. And I'm going to stretch it out a bit. We're not going to make huge beads. I have a tendency, doink, big, but not necessary. Certainly not necessary. Okay, so let's cut the end. And then, you know what? I want to make 3 beads. I'm going to take my ruler. Gonna take my ruler. my scummy little ruler. And let's make each of these beads 1 inch. Like so. Scrap clay. Like that. All right. Now, just in case you want to know, the diameter of the whole thing is, about 3/4 of an inch. Now, we have to conceal this. I want to make round beads. So I'm going to take my fingers and just doink, press the ends in lightly, see? And then pull the clay from the sides up like so, and I'm rotating and I'm just coaxing it up over, dun, 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 like so. Now let's do the other side. Like that. Now I am going to cover the ends with a cane slice, so this does not have to be perfect. Now maybe sometimes it would need to be perfect. This is not one of them. Roll it into a ball. Ta-ta. Looks like an olive. I love olives. And now, it's like I didn't quite make a round ball. It's getting rounder though. Yeah, it is. Getting rounder, getting rounder. Okay, that's pretty good. Now I'm going to take this little tool and I am just going to drill straight through the middle. Now, the secret to drilling a hole straight through is to put the tool in and now aim the tip of the tool at your finger on the end. I'm just aiming it right there at my finger. See? Came out where my finger was. Now, take it out and re-drill. Just like that. Okay, so let's begin by putting our bead caps on the end. And the bead cap is going to be, which is bigger? This one. Okay, so the secret to cutting canes for me is to cut very slowly and to watch the blade as I'm cutting through. Now it also helps to have a really sharp blade, like this blue blade. It's really sharp. It's kind of thin. So if you have some really like big cane, then you probably want to use this one, even though this one's sharper. And that's because when you're cutting through a large mass of clay, it tends to grab the blade and sometimes it torques it through like that. Makes it difficult to control. This rigid blade, it was really helpful. Very helpful. Okay, so I'm going to try to cut this probably, maybe that thick. And it's crooked, see? It's skinny there and it's thick there. So this goes in the scrap pile. And I will give it another try. Now, frequently this happens on the first cut. And then it happens less as you cut through because the cane itself is now sort of settled into a position. Before, it wasn't. Okay. So that's good. That's good. So this might be 1.5 millimeters, something like that. So now I'm going to cut the second one. Let's cut the second one. Okay. I'm trying. They don't always come. I'm not a machine. Not a machine, but it looks pretty good. Let me cut a third one. Now, which two are the most similar? Okay, so whenever you cut, there's a bit of a squash. There's a bit of a squash factor. These two are most alike, so I'm going to use them. So what I'm going to do now, set that aside. I'm going to try to find the center of this guy. There's the center. Here's the center of this guy, like so. Now I'm going to pick it up like that, and then put it over the hole. And kind of ease it onto the bead, like so, okay? All right, let's repeat. Let's pick this guy up. I'm gonna put him right on my tool like that. Let's find the hole, put him right on the hole. Put it right over the hole. And then kind of ease it in, because the slice is curving over something. You know, you just sort of ease it in like you're sewing. Has anybody ever made like a set-in sleeve or something? You know, you have to ease the fabric in. And so in the same way, clay kind of works the same way. All right, now I want you to inspect the band in the middle and try to even that out too, because you want the distance between the two of them to be the same all the way around. It's a goal. Okay, now at this point, I'm going to pierce through, and I'm going to work on the bead as it is on the tool. I find it just a bit easier. Okay. All right, so let me just put that right there, because now we have to do a little bit of reducing. I'm going to take this guy, because this guy is the one that's going to be going maybe in 4 places around. So I want to reduce it. Now, reducing canes is, especially when they're tiny like this, it's not very difficult. What you're going to do to begin with is you're going to start pinching like this and rotating. And you know what? Can you see that clay moving? I can. Well, that's what we want. We want it to move like that. Now, if parts, like if the magenta is moving faster out than the violet, it means that it's a bit softer. If you want, you can take it and you can kind of push it back in like so. So you're flattening the face of the cane again. This is the face. The image is the face. And then squeeze some more. And what I'm basically doing here is trying to get the pressure and my energy to the middle. I would like to see that violet move more. You know what? It is moving more. What you don't want is you don't want it to be left behind. Yeah, that's really bad. Okay, so when you're doing canes, the clay should be close to the same softness or hardness. And these really were pretty much, they were very close. But also, it's less a concern when you're making something this size than when you're making something like this size. Okay. All right. So now it's moving pretty well. So now I'm just going to stretch it out just a bit. Now, when I make canes this small, I don't reduce the whole thing. So I'll leave this end kind of chunky and reduce this end. All right. Now, let's see. Yeah, that's a good size. So now, let's see how many slices do I want. Okay, so the goal here is to cut the slices the same thickness as these guys. I mean, it's a goal. It is a goal. 1, 2, 3, let's cut 4 just in case. All right. Now see the little squish, the little flat part? Well, you can improve your result quite a bit if you just take the time and try to make the cane round. In other words, eliminate that flat area, okay? Just gently tug on it. Maybe it won't be perfect. You can do a little bit of this kind of thing too. While it's flat on your work surface, you can do a little bit of reshaping, like so. All right. Looking good. Looking good. Now, one other thing you could try, because you have that white clay too, is you could try working tone on tone, which is very attractive. In other words, let's say you mix your violet and then take half of it, or take some of it, and then take some of it, not half, take some of it and mix it into white. So you would be working then with violet and lavender, tone on tone. All right, so let's get some slices on our little bead. There's one. Okay, so now I could work in thirds or fourths. I'll just do 4. So in order to position it, I look at the top and then I try to determine where the exact opposite point is. So let's just take this little needle, drop it down, and I think it's about right there. Now, this looks like it's a little closer together. The band is a little tighter here. So I think I can make a minor adjustment to it just by taking my fingers and pushing. So let's see if I can get this directly on top of that mark I made. I'll do my best. Like so. And now let's take these two and put them right between them, like so. Okay. Now, as long as you don't really push it down, you should be able to rearrange it. If you put it down and it's really off, as long as you don't push it down, you should be able to lift it off. Unless the clay you're using is really, really sticky, then that's another whole set of problems. All right, so let us take our last cane and reduce it even further, because we want this cane to fit in these spaces. All right, so let's give it a go. Let me go on this side. Yeah, these are pretty much the same thickness. This one's going to be pretty tiny, which will be fine. Okay, so here we go. I need 8 pieces, 8 slices. So this is going to be one of these funny canes I have sitting around with a very fat end and a very skinny end. It's always a good idea, if you can, to keep some of your cane in its original big size, okay? It's a good idea. You can always reduce. Now, as you're reducing, you know, you can feel the clay responding and you can feel the clay softening up. So when you feel that it's soft all the way through, that's when you can start twisting and stretching. You see, I'm stretching. Roll a bit, twist, stretch. Now, if the clay is not totally soft inside, then it's going to crack. Yeah. Ask me how I know. It's something that happens to all of us, I think, particularly when we're first starting with cane work. We didn't really talk about what canes are. Well, you can see that a cane is an image, even as simple as this is, that runs from one end to the other. You can also reduce the size of it, and you don't lose the image. Sushi is a cane. You can't really reduce it out, but it is a cane. So are those Christmas cookies with the, you know, like snowflakes and reindeer and stuff. So here is the tiny cane, like that. So let's just cut some slices. And see if this is the right size. Oops, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay, so there's one. Now I will cut another. And when a cane gets this small, sometimes it's helpful to roll it as you cut. If you have time, you might just let it sit and kind of gel up so that it isn't quite so soft. This is not too bad, even though it's quite a fresh cane. I meant to do my nails today. I don't like doing my nails. I meant to, didn't get to it. Okay. So here's a simple but quite a cute bead, I think. Let's try something. I don't know whether I want to do this with this one or the orange one. Do I want to put another dot here? Yeah, I think this one. Okay, so let's add more. Why not? Oops, not in the middle. So you can see you can build up quite a collection of these things and go to town. Go to town. All right, so there's a little bead. And all it took were a few simple canes like that. I like it. I like it a lot. You could also roll little tiny balls and put them in there. Now, if you were going to do that, you would just simply take a ball stylus and then make a little indent and then put a little ball inside. I don't think I'll do that. I think this is ready. Could put a little bead cap on, however. Let's put a black one on. Okay, so I'm just going to roll my clay through a thick setting. Let's go through 0. All right, and I'll take a little cutter. Now these are sweet little cutters, I think. I like them. I like them. Let's see, how would that look? Okay, so when you're using an open cutter like this one, what you're going to do is take your clay and really stick it to your table. You want that clay to stick, because then you can cut, and then remove the clay. Then you don't have to fish it out of the cutter itself. Okay, so let us find the center again. I'm gonna pick it up. It is a little tiny, a little teeny. Now let's position it over the hole. And there's a little bead cap. Position it over the hole again. Oh, cute, cute. And that, I would say, is a very beginner bead. All right, so I'm going to put this in the oven. Now, how does this go in the oven? Well, what I do is I have a bed of baking soda, and I make a little indent in the baking soda, and then I put this in, and then I cure it. Okay? Now, a bead like this, I'll probably cure for about between 20 and 30 minutes from a cold oven. I know my oven takes 10 minutes to get to temp, so if I set it at 30, it will actually cure at 20. Okay? Now, if you don't have a dedicated oven, you can use your home oven, your home cooking oven. There is nothing in polymer clay that's going to hurt you. All right, so let me bake this and then I'll be back. Let's do a second simple pattern. Now, I've got my bead prepared. You can see it's a little lopsided, but also this one was too. But by the time you get all the slices on, you can't really tell. All right, so I put caps on with this, and now I am going to cut 8 slices off of the reduced orange and red. Let me move over, so hopefully I can stay sort of in the center. Hopefully. All right. So let us cut 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Now we have our 8 slices. They're pretty tiny. Do your best at restoring the roundness, like so. And let's just put one on, say right here, just like that. And even when it's on, sometimes you can just sort of gently push to shape it. Now I'm going to look for the opposite spot, the other side of the bead. And I look from the top. I think that looks good. Now let me center it in the band, like so. Now the next slice, of course, is right in between. Now these slices are pretty small. I could probably do 6. I could do one here, one there. Let's do 6. Just not gonna press them on yet. Just kind of position them. They'll stick there. Okay, let's do the other side. Okay, yeah, I think 6 is better. It fills the available space better. Don't have quite so much black showing. Okay, there we go. Now, we want to fill the space around the caps. So, this is the way we do that. We take a full slice and we cut it in half. Just trying to round this a little more. That looks better. So I'm just going to cut it in half, like so. Pick up 1/2 and position it like so between the 2 full slices. Okay, just do your best to put it into position and then press it down like so. All right, let's take the other one. And perhaps I can do a better job if I just press it down first and then scoop it up so that it's sticking to the side of my blade. Then position it like so. Okay, so let's do this one. Turn it, pick it up with the side of the blade. I seem to have picked up like lint. Yeah, linty. Now, what I could also have done is actually reduce the size of this. You know, then they wouldn't be so close together. But I don't really mind them being close together like that and touching. That's fine. Okay. Almost looks like a scallop like that. Okay, let me cut a few more slices. Try to round them. It's easier to restore the shape of larger slices, as you can see. And then one last one. On this side, then I will repeat on the other, and I will cut, I've got 1 slice here, I will cut a total of 3. Now to fit this in, like so. Okay. Yeah, I've tried to make them perfect, but I must confess, I'm not sure I've ever done a totally perfect bead like this. Oh, incomplete. That goes in the scrap bin. Okay, that's good. All right, so let us reshape. Reshape, cut it in half. This one looks really good. How did that happen? That one's okay. All right, so I will repeat with these 6 and then I will be back. Actually, I won't be back. You saw how we did these little caps? That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pop this in the oven. Then I'll be back. All right, so this one's done. You can see it's not really centered, but that doesn't really bother me that much. Now, I do want to say one thing. If this cap had been smaller, then this size would not have fit, right? These would be too big. If the cap were larger, there would be more space between these slices. So when you get to that point, you may find that you have to reduce your cane further so that they fit, the half slices actually fit. This is kind of dependent on the size of this, okay? So it worked out perfectly this time. 6 were perfect around, all right? They were perfect. But, you know, that might not have happened if this were a smaller cane than it is. So, anyway, just wanted to warn you about that. Now, the next thing, and this is something that I do when beads are very big, and you know what? I guess technically this is a pretty big bead. So I'm going to do this and show you a way, I believe, of more evenly centering the mass of clay. Actually, first I have to shut down for a minute. I don't have a few lights on, so I hope that's better. Sometimes I just sit down and I start working and it seems bright enough, and you know, 2 of my overhead lights were not on. So I apologize if what I just shot was a bit dark. Hopefully not too dark. Anyway, getting back to drilling a hole through the very center of a bead. This does help. Stand up your cylinder. Here's our cylinder. Let's just roll the sides, smooth them out a bit more, and stand it up. Now take a needle tool, something like this. Find the exact center and drill straight through, like that, to the other side. Now withdraw, turn it over, and find the exact center of this side and push down, and it will meet like that. Now, theoretically, that is as close to the center of this mass of clay as I am going to get, okay? So now, we're just going to continue what we did before, which was pulling the sides up like this, right? Trying to cover up that scrap clay, like so, like that. And because we're doing the bead cap, it doesn't have to be completely covered. So let's just do that. Now, I'm going to take this and I'm going to pierce through to restore the hole. Just like that. All right, let's continue to push our clay up around the bead poker thing. All right, now let's repeat on the other side. Dun, dun, dun. Just little, tiny little tricks that I even sometimes forget about myself. Don't know what to say about that. It happens. It happens. Okay, so let us enter from the other side and drill through. Now, let's just poke that clay up around the tool. All right. Now, from this point, now I'm going to try to make it round. I've got the hole inside, right? So now this is just attempting to make it a round bead, like so. Let's check on the hole again. Sometimes it will go a bit astray. So it's also not a bad idea to do some shaping with the tool in the clay. Now this works really well if you're making it really like this guy, big, huge, huge. These guys aren't that big, but I think they benefit from this simple little technique. Yes, sometimes I'm so anxious to get into my studio, I forget to turn on the lights. Sorry. You know, iPhones, I shoot on my iPhone, guys, and it's just totally amazing to me how good iPhones are. I mean, how good cell phone cameras are. It's kind of amazing. I have a pile of Canon cameras that I have not used in many, many, many years because honestly, my phone does as good or better, a better job. All right, so here you see, I'm just simply refining the shape now. And once that is done, I will make another bead. And once I get the caps on, I will show you whether the band is any more even than the others. All right? Okay. Honestly, I could probably do this all day. Nah, I don't want to do this all day, like make a round bead. Okay, I'll be back. You know what? I'm looking at it and it does look a little more uniform, the band. But, you know, it isn't just the mass, right? The proper distribution of the mass to make sure that the hole is going right through the center. But it's also whether your bullseye or your bead cap is perfectly round. And it's also whether you can find the exact center and then when you put it on. So those are also things that affect whether this central band is going to be very uniform all the way around. Okay, so there are a couple more, it's a little more complicated. Not much, just a bit. Okay, so I think that we'll put this one around this again. So this is a little large. I'm going to reduce it slightly. Just a bit. Okay. And maybe, you know what, this time we'll do something a little bit different again. Why not? This is a basic class, but because it's very basic and doesn't mean that there aren't things that you can do to make it more, to change it up so it doesn't look exactly the same. Now let's just cut off this piece. All right, I'm gonna stash this over here. And I think we should make this a triangle. All right, so here's a triangle. Starts out round, and I'm just going to take my fingers and pinch like this, just like that. So you can see I'm pulling up a ridge like that. And as I'm pulling up the ridge, I'm pushing down. So I'm also creating the other two corners of our triangle. Now they're not as sharp as this one. You see, you can see the difference. See how rounded that is? See how much sharper that is? Well, not a problem, because now I'm going to pull and refine this corner. Yeah, I am. Then I flip to the third corner and repeat. Okay. Now you can make your corners very sharp if you reduce a bit. I'm not going to reduce a bit for this particular class. I want them to be this size. But reduction of a triangle is quite a simple thing. because you use this part of your fingers and you drag along and you push your fingers down to your work surface and you pull like that. As you pull, you're going to hang on. So it's this type of thing. Just pull like that. I'm just doing it just a tiny bit because I don't really want to reduce it. Anyway, so that is a beginning lesson on reducing a triangle. Okay, but this you can easily do. So you might as well. All right, so let's take a cut. And here is our triangle. Okay, so now I think let's just cut a bunch of slices. Now, in terms of the thickness, you don't want to cut your slices too thin, and you don't want them too thick. Yeah, it's like the Three Little Bears. Okay. Too thick can be a bit of a problem, but too thin is a bigger problem, okay, in my opinion. Okay, so let's just put that guy down like that. Take the corners and kind of push the corners down so that they conform to the curve of the bead cap. All right. Same thing. I always go one side. I'm going to take it off for this. Then zoom over to the opposite side, like so. I'm going to take this guy off for a moment. Yeah, that's a better fit. You know, when you're putting your slices on, it's quite easy to have an edge, maybe overlapping an edge, and you really don't want that. You don't want this overlapping business. Okay, no overlap. Now let us position this slice right in between those two. Once again, just take your fingers and coax the corners down so they conform to the curve of the bead cap. And number 4. Number 4. Like so. Now, I have to cut one more. I have to cut one more. Okay. So let us take these. Come on. And position them between the ones on the opposite, around the opposite bead cap. Now, if you can't get your fingers in, you can probably use a tool to do this. What tool? Could be, let's just grab a tool. And here I'm just trying to center it so that the black bands that run between the triangles are the same thickness, right? That looks good. Okay, so you could, if you needed to, take something like this, just take the side of it and very gently push the corners in. These are very simple beads, but I think that they're good beads, you know. when you're starting, I think it's beneficial to have simple things that you can do that give you a really nice result, something that you will use and you will enjoy and you can be proud of. Okay, I think that's a sweet little bead. Now, could add more to it. You have all this black space. You could greatly reduce some of these. Let's do this one. I'm going to reduce this one even further. And then we're just going to have a little spot of this color. Now to get this done, I'm just going to cut this, and let's just reduce this small piece. So it's just a little shot of color. And I do want it kind of tiny. Don't want it too big. I just want a shot. I have a box of little tiny canes like this that I just keep around because you never know when you're going to need one, and I will get that and show you. Because I use shotgun shell boxes to store them. Yeah. No shotgun shells, just canes. Okay, so I think that's good. Just a teeny bit smaller. Okay. Now, these are a little bit too thin for me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oops. Oopsie. They're so tiny. My spacing was a little off, wasn't it? Yeah, just a tad. Oh, that's a sweet little bead. Okay, now we have to put our bead caps on. I mean, you can literally keep going and keep going and keep going. Just keep adding things. Oh, stuck. I was hoping it wouldn't do that. This is what you have to do if your clay doesn't stick to your table or your work surface, I should say. Let's find the center, push it in, put it over the hole. withdraw the tool. Remove the lint. I don't know where the lint's coming from. Obviously me. But why? Why? Why, oh linty one? Okay, so this guy and this guy are ready to go in the oven. Then we've got 3 beautiful beads from the simplest canes you could possibly make. Yeah. Okay, let me get these in the oven. We have made the most basic canes and beads, which is all fine and good, but now what? You know what? Now they have to be cured. So this is what I do for beads. See, in this little bowl, actually I have a tray. I just use this because I can fit it under my camera. But in this bowl, you see some baking soda, not baking powder, and I don't use cornstarch. Could use cornstarch, but I like baking soda because it's cheaper and because it just does the same thing that cornstarch does. So for something like a bead like this, I would just take it and kind of nest it into the powder, and that's the way it would cure, okay? So the theory here is that the baking soda will support the form, right? Like that. All right, so whenever anything is curved or shaped or, you know, sort of round, something like round like this, maybe this goes face down. Okay, maybe. All right, so there's one thing. And I put it in a metal bowl. Of course, metal is fine in the oven. Metal is fine in the oven. Do not put plastic in the oven, okay? I think you guys know that. Now, when I'm making something that's flat, like flat. Oh, let me see, do I have anything flat? Something flat. I will bake on tiles like this. I take the raw piece and it is sitting on a tile and the whole tile goes in the oven. Because of course tiles, nothing's going to happen to a tile. At the curing temperatures for polymer clay, nothing's going to happen. So there's the second. Now sometimes I want to make things that have a curve to them, like this. See, this is like a little dish. Well, that's the time you slap it on something like this metal IKEA bowl. And when the clay is raw, it sticks to it. You put it in the oven, cures, and then after you just kind of pop it off. Okay, now let me see what else. What else? Oh, okay. Now let's say you are curing something and it is, you don't want any flat shiny spots on it. Then what you will do is you will cure, just wrap a tile with paper towel like this, put the piece on, and then you don't get the shiny spots on the back like that. Let me see what else. I think that that's just really the basic stuff you need to know. We haven't talked about certain other materials like poly pastes and liquids, and the use of those materials might sometimes dictate how you're going to cure something. But for this class, I think that this is just pretty much all you need to know. Now, temperature and time. Follow the manufacturer's instructions as to the temperature and the time. Now, if you can determine whether your oven is accurate or far off, whatever, I have a little probe in my oven so that I can actually, every once in a while, I check and see if the numbers are on or off. Now, all clays, I think there's a certain range in which you can operate. I use Kato POLYCLAY. I tend to cure hotter. Okay, so the recommendations on the package are, anyway, 300 degrees for 10 to 30 minutes. Do not exceed 350. So 350 is the point at which the clay is not going to cure. It's going to overcure. It'll probably be degraded. Clay doesn't really burn much anymore. Not really. Not the way it used to when it had phthalates in it. But just follow the instructions on the package. Let me say one last thing. You can cure polymer clay in your home oven. When I first started, you couldn't do that because of the phthalates. Because the old formulations of polymer clay at that time outgassed. Outgas means that when you cure, something comes out. And it used to collect in the oven as this awful greasy green stuff. So that doesn't happen anymore because the phthalates are gone. So clay, polymer clay, is perfectly safe to cure in your home oven, the same oven you cook with. I think that's it. I think that's it. The only other thing I guess I would say is set a timer. If your oven doesn't, if you don't turn on your oven with a timer, like my convection oven, I just, swing it over to the time it turns on, and then it automatically turns off. But you do want to, monitor the time. Okay. Okay, so I told you I would show you my little box of little teeny tiny tiny canes. I mean, look, some of these, look at this guy. I use this guy for like little berries. And what this is red with a gold wrap. Yeah, so you can see. I just keep the, and this is a shotgun 22 J&J 22 Hornet 357 Rem Max. Remington? I have no idea. I mean, bullets or shotgun shells or whatever are never going to find this box, but that's what it was made for. And so I put my canes in it. Okay, so this little guy will go in this one too. And I think they have taller ones as well. So that guy goes there. Maybe I'll cut the end off and this guy will go next to it like that. Okay, so I'll be back after the beads are cured. Okay, so while our canes are curing, let's talk a little bit about storage. Cane storage is really kind of tough. I mean, I find it very difficult because I make so many. Now, what you can do quite easily, let me take this out, because I had already decided to use this for another purpose. My dear friend Lane gave me a bunch of these wonderful Plano boxes. And I say wonderful, they are wonderful. Plano is like a really quality box manufacturer. So if you happen to be beginning, you can of course store your canes in something like this, a Plano box. If you choose to, you can wrap them. I don't really wrap my canes, but let's say I just wanted to use this to start storing my canes away. So I would do something like this. Just put them in these boxes. Now, as I said, you could wrap them. You could put the same ones in the same thingies, compartments. That was the word I was looking for. Something like that. And, I don't wrap my canes because they don't tend to stick together. Okay, now if you're using a clay that's really soft and sticky, then perhaps your clay would stick together. I also don't take them and shake them. So the boxes are pretty stable. They don't really, unless it falls off of something. But generally speaking, this is a fine way for me to store my canes. like this. Nothing's going to happen to them. Now, I also store what we call Skinner blends. You guys might know this, might not. Might be for another simple bead making class. This is called a Skinner blend, and this is the way I store them. So, of course, any kind of clay thing can be stored in boxes like this. Now, what you have to be careful of is that you don't go after this. You don't store things in this hard plastic stuff, right? The problem is many of these hard plastics, if not all, share some kind of common ingredient with the clay. And, you know, this is a case where, you know, having something in common is a bad thing, because what happens is when something like this that shares something, has a common ingredient with something like this, and you put them together, they will start to merge. You know how, and the merging manifests itself as stickiness. It just they start melting together. So you never want to like leave these two particular materials together. You're looking for something that's sort of translucent like this, these Plano boxes. They're flexible. And you know what? I will turn this over. And let's take a look and see. This is a recycle number 5. So recycle number 5 is fine. I believe 4 is fine. I don't have the exact numbers, but I know 5 is fine because this Plano box is 5. So that you can Google, you know, recycle numbers and what they're good for. But generally speaking, just stay away from this hard, brittle plastic, okay, in any color. This just happens to be clear. Comes in many different colors, but you just want to stay away from it. So this is the way you can store your clay. Now, as I said, if you are using a very sticky clay, then you probably do want to wrap these. And so you can wrap them in, I think it's Glad wrap. One of the plastic wraps is better than the other, and I'm not sure which one. I will Google, and I will put that in the description. But seeing as how I never do that, I just do this. Now, you could probably wrap with, you have to be careful with things like waxed paper and even, you know, deli paper, because this kind of paper is absorbent and it will start to leach out and remove something from the clay. Okay, so I think we covered that. I will, as I said, Google. I will Google. Okay. All right, beads in the oven. I'll be back when they're out. Well, here we are at the end of this beginner's class, an introduction to polymer clay and caning and simple bead making. Yep, that's what it was. Anyway, so here are the beads that I made in class, just using the simplest cane there is. And, you know, we started with a pretty limited color palette, didn't we? But we mixed those secondary colors. Yeah. So once you get accustomed, once you know that you love it, and I hope you do, that's when you can go out there and get all those colors you want. But I happen to believe that in the beginning, it's probably good to start small, learn a couple things along the way, and, you know, then you will know whether you want to, like, jump in with both feet. Now, you've made this, but, you know, with just the addition of a very few techniques, Skinner blend, one color to another, blending, Skinner blend, zipper cane. This is in a class. I will put a link to it. And, you know, just those few simple things. And these become quite a bit more complicated, even though in terms of like real world working on it, it's not really terribly more complicated at all. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you pursue polymer clay. And if you like it, maybe you'll consider joining the classroom and taking some more classes. Now, the classes in the classroom have things like materials lists and templates and things like that this class does not. Yeah, it's true. What can I say? What can I say? Okay, guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for watching. And until we meet again, I'm Donna Kato, signing off.